Welcome back to What Really Matters. Continuing our conversation with Nan Brasmer, President of the Board, California Alliance for Retired Americans, or CARA. Good to have you back, Nan.
Thanks.
The last two items on the 2007 list of priorities. The first one was the right of renters and homeowners. What's the problem? What's the solution?
Well, there are several problems, and the first one is that there are not enough affordable rental properties in our cities and towns that seniors and low-income people can afford.
Okay.
So we have that problem. Now, to exacerbate that, developers are buying what is available to convert into condominiums, which they then can sell. And their logic is that first-time home buyers can afford their $250,000 old apartment converted into a condominium in a downtown area. So their logic is, we'll revitalize downtown. It's good for the the local economy, etc. But in the meantime, Grandma's out on the street because she lived in that apartment that is now priced out of her price range or is being turned into a condominium. And that's happening all over with mobile home parks. Not so much the lovely, nice, big ones that you see, but the ones that in the old days we called trailer parks. The ones with the single wide trailers that are 40 years old. They're too fragile to move. The other parks don't want them because they're not pretty double and triple wides and they don't fit their criteria. And the people who live in those and who own those trailers are senior citizens who then have no place to go. And they want to develop those same kinds of condominiums, maybe actually build new buildings to do that, or to put in some business kinds of activities rather than have these low rental areas for people that need them. On the homeowner side, then we get into our issue is not so much affordable homes, because in California that's a major oxymoron.
I agree.
But that they are in what are called common interest developments. Many people think if they move into a gated community, they're safe, they have all this ambiance and all these services and etc. Our cities and towns look at those communities as cash cows because like the Del Webb developments.
Oh yeah, outside of Roseville.
And they're all over the place. They're building one in Manteca and it's lovely and I would love to live there.
Yeah.
But they pay then, the developer pays for the streets and their maintenance, for the water and the sewer and the maintenance and the lighting district and all of the landscaping. So the cities where they build don't have the cost that they do for other neighborhoods that come to their cities. Except mine, who sticks the builder with all of that, no matter what. But in those, many of those areas, and these common interest developments are also in a lot of the mobile home parks, the nice big parks and the leisure worlds of the world, and those huge communities of primarily senior individuals. And they have maintenance fees. So you may own your home there, but your maintenance fee changes every year to pay for the streets and the landscaping and all of that. And that's not an unreasonable thought. The problem is that these maintenance districts have boards of directors. They have no rules or laws requiring them to have any transparency. So they don't have to tell you what your maintenance fees are going for. They don't have to account for the money they collect into these maintenance fee accounts.
What Nan is alluding to, again, hits to the heart of the values we espouse in this show. Think about the renters and the homeowners. You try to be fiscally conservative. You try to afford your house, but here we have a group that's charging willy-nilly for maintenance and not even bothering to tell you. Now, I can tell you, if I tried to do that with my clients, I'd be run out of town on a rail. And imagine paving over or taking away the trailer park. It may not be the prettiest part of town. I'm not here to say that. But what is the social justice in throwing somebody out and then saying, well, this is a first-time home buyer thing for you? Some of those first-time home buyer condos are $500,000. I saw another one that was $830,000. $830,000 in San Francisco. I can tell you, when I was a first-time home buyer, well, maybe it was in the other wallet that I had the $830,000. And from an environmental justice point of view, which is our third leg of our value stool, environmental justice, when you destroy the housing, when you get rid of that stuff, do you know where it goes? Most of the time it goes into landfill. You're violating all three principles here in what Nan is talking about. Renters and homeowners, a hot button issue. The last one on the list, bringing the troops home. What's the problem? What's the solution?
Well, the problem is we're in a situation that should never have happened in the first place, it being, you know, the true blue Democrat that I am. We think as older Americans that we're not in a just war. We've torn up a country. We're forcing a democracy on people that have no concept of what democracy is or should be. And we're losing our young people, both men and women, way, way too fast. We're sending them over there in a war that is not winnable, from the comments I get from my World War II veterans, because, you know, they're still around out there. It's not America's war. And all it's doing is making the rest of the world hate us, because we really have become the Attila the Huns of the world, and we just go marching willy-nilly into any country to impose our way of doing things on them, which is not necessarily the best way to do things, and probably is not the best way for these other countries to do things. So consequently, we take a position and have taken a position through the resolution process as well as through our priority voting, that we want this war to end. The money they're throwing after this war would provide health care for everyone in this country in perpetuity.
Exactly.
It would provide housing, for people who cannot afford it or who can afford very little. It would help the working poor, which is a group that's growing and growing, and and they're going to be our leaders of tomorrow, but they're not going to be able to be our leaders because they're busy trying to support themselves and their families. So, we just want the war to end, and we want the troops brought home, and that's just the way it has to be. We're just in the wrong place.
Well, listeners, as you know, I'm the financial advisor for the American Legion Post 471, and there's certainly a group of good conservatives that even they oppose the war. They oppose the war. And let me put it to you a different way, listeners. I was in Bath, England recently, and our bus driver who was taking us out to Stonehenge had worked in Saudi Arabia for quite a few years. Also on the tour with us were some gentlemen from Jordan. And they got to talking about common interests, and they echoed what Nan said. We're trying to install a democracy where one will not work. And frankly, in my opinion, anytime you try to promote your values and force them on somebody else who doesn't want them, it won't work. Nan, as we start to wrap up the segment, what is the future of the unions and labor? You have a heavy labor representation, in my mind, in the CARA group. So what is the future of union and labor in America?
Well, that's a really big one, and I'm such a Pollyanna that I think it will improve. Personally, I don't know that there's anything out there to substantiate that, but the unions built this country, and the unions have really taken a hit as being the bad guys in every situation imaginable. But the unions, brought us weekends, it brought us sick leave, it brought us vacation, it brought us reasonable pay raises and cost of living increases. It brought many of us health care. It gave us the opportunity to promote on a fair basis, not on a favoritism basis. It gave us training to do our jobs, to do jobs that we could aspire to. The unions are not the bad guys here. And labor on the other side, labor being, in my mind, all of us, but also management. I was a labor representative for 15 years.
Okay.
And I found that when I met with management, and I never did it alone, so I don't mean that to be implied here. I'd have a bargaining team or my chapter grievance committee or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I met with management, when I treated them the way I wanted to be treated, I got lots of things resolved.
Exactly.
When I tried to be this tough, gruff person, and I was going to cuss and I was going to pound on the table and I was going to threaten, which was already not my style, so they could just wait. They just, sometimes if I got really mad, they just sit there, drink their coffee and sit with their hands crossed and wait till I got over it. And then we talk like grown-ups and that people who respected each other. So I think the management folk out there who are being really nasty in their relations with their union folks are not contributing enough to a collegiality, to a position of listening and of working together to solve the problems.
Final question for you, Nan. What really matters?
That's a really big question. I think what really matters is that we learn, once again, to respect each other with dignity and that we honor each other.
I couldn't have said it better, listeners. Trust and respect.